Hello and welcome back to our second video for our compensation guidelines for the South Carolina Synod. My name is Pastor Jason Antley. I'm part of the compensation guidelines task force for our Synod, along with Pastor and Assistant to the Bishop Jenny Abisher and also Deacon Lexan Graves. For our purposes today, we're going to be putting together a Excel spreadsheet with our compensation guidelines, a more practical outlet, and we hope that you'll enjoy what we have to offer. And then also to give you permission that at any point that you need to, please pause the video as we go through the different steps. We think that would be helpful to you, and we hope that this is a helpful tool. So to get started, we're going to go into the Synod webpage, scsynod.com. We ask when you get there, you would go to the Congregations tab, and you'll see these menus pull down. Go over to the far left where it says Congregations. We'd like you to click on the first that says Call Process and Compensation. That'll direct you to the page for Call Process and Compensation. We'd ask that you scroll down at that point. Continue to scroll until you get to the Compensation Resources part of the page. What you're going to see here is a YouTube video for compensation guidelines. It's actually a little highlights video of the guidelines, and so we invite you to watch that at your leisure. You're going to go below that for our purposes today to the first download tab, which is where we're going to download our compensation guidelines for rostered ministers. Press download. So as you see, it's pulled it up in the web browser. So for our purposes today, I'm going to work with this copy. Then we need to return back to the page we were at before, and we need to download one of the Excel spreadsheets. For our purposes today, I'm going to download the Excel spreadsheet that has to do with rostered ministers with the housing allowance, and I'm going to download that. Once it has finished downloading, we are actually going to take it and we are going to open it into our Excel. At this point, you're still going to need to save this document, and so what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, Save As. Again, I'm going to take it and put it on the desktop, and you can save it under whichever name would be appropriate for your context. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start by sort of going down each part of the Excel spreadsheet. So for our base salary, you see it says number from Appendix A. Again, what we're going to need to do is to pull up our compensation guidelines, and we're going to need to flip until we get to the page for Appendix A, which you will see here is pages 13 through 15. So we're going to scroll through the document until we get to the different appendices. So we have Appendix A here, and this is the salary guidelines for rostered pastors of the South Carolina Synod. And so for our purposes today, I'm going to go to our base salary number for an entry pastor into a congregation. And so I'm going to take that base salary number of $35,000, and I'm going to plug it into our spreadsheet. And once you do that, you'll see that it puts a dollar sign there, and some other things change. Disregard those changes. We're going to continue to go it down line by line. This line here for B, additional compensation for merit or skills. Again, if your rostered minister has had certain expertise in areas that would be helpful to his or her ministry in your context, then you can give additional compensation for those merit or skills. Since we're using the context of somebody coming directly out of seminary, and in my context, I'm thinking of somebody coming directly out of college into seminary, we're going to place a 0 in this column. Now, once we click outside of that, you'll see again some things change. Then what we're going to do is we're going to input our housing allowance. And so our housing allowance is going to be, as it says here, 30% of base salary for housing, which I believe in this context would be $10,800. Again, we click out of the box and you'll see certain things change. For row D, you're going to see these A, B, and C totaled at $45,800. And then you are going to see on row E our Social Security allowance. Now, as you can see, we have that allowance is a 16.459% of the total that you see in row D. Now, some of you might be wondering why that 16.459%. As you know, with pastors, the congregation pays both parts of Social Security. Now, you know that totals to be 15.3%. So there's two different ways usually that pastors have their Social Security handled. So if there is somebody in your congregation that is a financial secretary and they handle paying the Social Security for the pastor in your context, then at that point, yes, this line would only need to be 15.3% of row D. If you have somebody in your context that does not pay that, and the pastor is given that Social Security allowance as a part of their taxable liable income, then at that point we're going to pay that pastor 16.459%. The additional percentage points help to reimburse the pastor for the additional tax liability, since he or she is getting paid that amount, and then they have to pay it to wherever they send their Social Security allowance. Then we get to row F, where our cash salary is. So that is a total of lines A, B, C, and E. And then we scroll down and we see that is also in this box here. What we've done is we've calculated for you defined compensation. Defined compensation is not language that you hear in a lot of places, but it's going to be helpful language in terms of how you deal with portico benefits. Your benefits are actually going to be calculated based upon your defined compensation, your age, and some different things that we're going to go through in just a moment. So having this defined compensation number, 53,338 and 22 cents off of row J is going to be helpful to you. At this point, we're moving into our health and pension plan. And so again, we're going to need to enter a number, and actually this number is going to be calculated for us. We need to find out what our health care number is going to be. And so the only way to do that is you can see just to the right of where my cursor is, there is a link here, and you can actually copy and paste this link. And so you'll go here and you'll go to copy, and once you copy that link, then you can actually go back to your web browser and take it and put it in. For the sake of our time today, I've already done that. Once you put it into the web browser and press enter, this is the page that's going to come up. It is our Portico Benefits calculator. So what we want to do is we want to go to the top, calculate benefits cost. And we're going to click here. And at that point, we're going to start filling out these different parts. So choose a year. We're going to choose 2020. Which health benefit option would you like to calculate? Again, it depends on what your rostered minister is being placed at, whether it's the gold or platinum level or others. For our time together, I'm going to go with what the Synod recommends, our gold level. And then we have to pick which Synod we're a part of, which we're going to go to the South Carolina Synod. We'll push continue. Then this is where we're going to have to enter that defined compensation number. So we're going to go here, and we're going to see it's 53,338.22, 53,338.22, and we're going to enter that here, 53,328. 22. And once we click outside of the box, it'll take it and round it off for us. Then for health coverage, we will go to this first box. Again, is this primary coverage? Is this Medicare primary? Or are you planning to waive health benefits for self and family? And so we're going to say that this is, in our case, an ELCA primary coverage. You're going to enter the birth date of the rostered minister. So why don't we do a February 14th Valentine's baby, and we will do my birth year of 1982. Spouse coverage would be selected here, whether it's primary or whether it's waived or Medicare primary. Or if you have no spouse, you can click none. Same thing for children, whether you have children or not. At that point, there is something for special circumstances. For our time today, we're not going to consider that. We're going to go down to our retirement contributions. I'm going to put in the Synod recommended 12% for retirement contributions. And then in our housing equity retirement contributions. So, again, for folks who have a housing equity allowance, most of the time that is for folks who are not getting a housing allowance, that a congregation would set up in that context a housing equity, so that the rostered minister was given a certain amount of compensation to help them for the loss of equity since they don't own their own home. And so at that point in our situation here, I'm going to put none because that doesn't apply to us. And I'm going to push calculate. When I do, what you're going to find is all the stuff that I input there in the input summary. And then if you click on Gold Plus, it's going to show us the different categories. And so what we want to do is we want to take this annual number and we would like to copy that, take it back to our Excel spreadsheet where you see the question mark. We are going to paste that number there. And when we do that, you'll see that now there's a calculation up top. Again, the retirement, the disability, the basic group life, the retiree support that you see here are all calculated for you because they are percentage points of your defined compensation, but we have to go and physically find that health information as a part of the calculator. So once we do that, now we know that our ELCA health and pension plan is going to total this number here. As we continue to go down, are there additional benefits, tax sheltered annuities, life insurance, any of those things that you'll be including for our context today? We're going to say no. So we're going to put a 0 value there, which again gives us a total for row M. And then we're going to go down and talk about transportation mileage reimbursement. So there's a number of different ways that you can do this in terms of pay package. You can either have the rostered minister to give mileage charts and turn those in and get reimbursed up to a certain level, or you can actually put it in as taxable pay, and then the rostered minister would need to fill out mileage reports and submit them to their CPA and have them for proof as a part of their tax return. For today's purposes, we're actually going to put a mileage allowance into this first area here. Continuing education, we recommend $1,100, so we're going to put $1,100 there. And then official meetings. Is the congregation going to cover Synod assembly costs or those things? Maybe convocation, some of those things. Or is that going to be something that the rostered minister is going to cover? And if so, is there going to be extra compensation for that purpose? Here we'll say that the congregation is going to cover rostered minister's convocation and also Synod assembly. And so we're not going to add anything for official meetings there. There's only 2 more question marks to consider. Again, we have 4 weeks vacation leave, 4 weeks vacation Sundays, sick and parental leave. We would recommend that you have conversations about this with your rostered minister prior to somebody getting sick or somebody having a child or adopting a child and needing parental leave. And so please have those conversations ahead of time and go ahead and figure out what you would like to do in those situations, and you can place those into this compensation guideline there. We're going to say, for the sake of our conversation, that we're going to do 3 weeks. And then sabbatical weeks. Again, there's not a lot of folks that consider sabbaticals. We do recommend that rostered ministers get a sabbatical every 7 years. And so there's a part of our compensation guidelines you can go to read more about that. And so are you considering a sabbatical in the coming year or in the near future? You could fill that out there. Again, we'll talk about that. And for our time together, I'm just gonna put a 0 there. So largely what we've done is we've filled out the entire compensation guideline Excel spreadsheet. And what that brings us to is our defined compensation, our health and pension coverage costs, and then our total congregational cash outlay. That is the end dollar amount of what it will be that you will compensate your rostered minister. And again, I want to remind you that sometimes when we show this total congregational cash outlay number to our congregation, they tend to be fairly blown away at just the dollar amount. But I do want to remind you that most of the time, whenever you are looking at your pay from an employer in the regular business world, you don't see this final number here. You see something closer to this number because they're not going to actually show you the amount they're paying for your health care and pension and all that stuff. So just to let folks understand that this number may seem a little higher than what they're expecting, but that's because you're including in that health, pension, all those different parts, mileage reimbursement, continuing education, every single thing that the congregation would actually have as a part of that pay package. So just to warn you that if somebody says something about that number, that maybe that's a little bit that you can help to explain that to them. Thanks again for using this helpful tool. We hope that it is helpful for you. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact the South Carolina Synod office. Thank you.